What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Use the hashtag What Makes You Famous and find it everywhere. Time for a little What Makes You Smarter. Learn with me right here on the program. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, the lizard brain as part of the Triune Brain. I've heard the term lizard brain thrown around quite a bit throughout my life, and I'd like to know more. And if you'd like to know more, let's find out together. So officially, it's the Triune Brain. The Triune Brain is a model of the evolution of the vertebrate forebrain and behavior proposed by American physician and neuroscientist Paul D. MacLean. MacLean originally formulated his model in the 1960s and propounded it at length in his 1990 book, The Triune Brain in Evolution. The brain consists of the Reptilian Complex, the Paleo-Mammalian Complex, limbic system, and the Neo-Mammalian Complex, neocortex, viewed as structures sequentially added to the forebrain in the course of evolution. However, this hypothesis is no longer espoused by the majority of comparative neuroscientists in the post-2000 era. The triune brain hypothesis became familiar to a broad popular audience through Carl Sagan's Pulitzer Prize-winning 1977 book, The Dragons of Eden. The theory has been embraced by some physicians and at least one leading effective neuroscience researcher. The Reptilian Complex. The Reptilian Complex, also known as the R Complex or Reptilian Brain, was the name MacLean gave to the basal ganglia, structures derived from the floor of the forebrain during development. The term derives from the idea that comparative neuroanatomists once believed that the forebrains of reptiles and birds were dominated by these structures. MacLean proposed that the reptilian complex was responsible for species-typical instinctual behaviors involved in aggression, dominance, territoriality, and ritual displays. Paleo-Mammalian Complex. The paleo-mammalian brain consists of the septum, amygdala, hypothalamus, hippocampal complex, and cingulate cortex. MacLean first introduced the term limbic system to refer to this set of interconnected brain structures in a paper in 1952. MacLean's recognition of the limbic system as a major functional system in the brain was widely accepted among neuroscientists and is generally regarded as his most important contribution to the field. MacLean maintained that the structures of the limbic system arose early in mammalian evolution, hence paleo-mammalian, and were responsible for the motivation and emotion involved in feeding, reproductive behavior, and parental behavior. Neo-mammalian complex. The complex consists of the cerebral neocortex, a structure found uniquely in higher mammals, and especially humans. MacLean regarded its addition as the most recent step in the evolution of the mammalian brain, conferring the ability for language, abstraction, planning, and perception. Status of the model. MacLean originally formulated the triune brain hypothesis in the 1960s, drawing on comparative neuroanatomical work done by Ludwig Edinger, Elizabeth C. Crosby, and Charles Judson Herrick early in the 20th century. In the 1980s, saw a rebirth of interest in comparative neuroanatomy, motivated in part by the availability of a variety of new neuroanatomical techniques for charting the circuitry of animal brains. Subsequent findings have refined the traditional neuroanatomical ideas upon which MacLean based his hypothesis. For example, the basal ganglia, structures derived from the floor of the forebrain and making up MacLean's Reptilian Complex, were shown to take up a much smaller portion of the forebrains of reptiles and birds, together called sauropsids, than previously supposed, and to exist in amphibians and fish as well as mammals and sauropsids. Because the basal ganglia are found in the forebrains of all modern vertebrates, they most likely date to the common evolutionary ancestor of the vertebrates, more than 500 million years ago, rather than to the origin of reptiles. Some recent behavioral studies do not support the traditional view of sauropsid behavior, as well as stereotyped and ritualistic, as in MacLean's Reptilian Complex. Birds have been shown to possess highly sophisticated cognitive abilities, such as of the New Caledonian crow and the language-like categorization of the gray parrot. Structures of the limbic system, which MacLean proposed arose in early mammals, have now been shown to exist across a range of modern vertebrates. The mammalian trait of parental care of offspring is widespread in birds and occurs in some fishes as well. Thus, like the basal ganglia, the evolution of these systems presumably dates to a common vertebrate ancestor. Finally, recent studies based on paleontological data or comparative anatomical evidence strongly suggest that the neocortex was already present in the earliest emerging mammals. In addition, although non-mammals do not have a neocortex in the true sense, that is, a structure comprising part of the forebrain roof or pallium, consisting of 6 characteristic layers of neurons. They possess pallial regions, and some parts of the pallium are considered homologous to the mammalian neocortex. While lack the characteristic 6 neocortical layers, birds and reptiles generally possess 3 layers: the homologue of the mammalian neocortex, the telencephalon of birds, and neuroanatomical connections with other telencephalic structures, like those made by neocortex. It mediates similar functions such as perception, learning and memory, decision-making, motor control, conceptual thinking. Lay interest. The triune model of the mammalian brain is seen as an amplified organizing theme by some in the field of comparative neuroscience. It continues to hold public interest because of its simplicity. While inaccurate in many respects as an explanation for brain activity, structure, and evolution, it remains one of the very few approximations of the truth we have to work with. The neocortex represents that cluster of brain structures involved in advanced cognition, including planning, modeling, and simulation. The limbic brain refers to those brain structures, wherever located, associated with social and nurturing behaviors, mutual reciprocity, and other behaviors and effects that arose during the age of the mammals. And the reptilian brain refers to those brain structures related to territoriality, ritual behavior, and other reptile behaviors. The simple explanatory value makes this approximation engaging and may be a useful level of complexity for high school students to begin engaging with brain research. Howard Bloom, in his book, The Lucifer Principle, references the concept of the triune brain in his explanations of certain aspects of human behavior. Arthur Koestler made MacLean's concept of the triune brain the centerpiece of much of his later work, notably The Ghost in the Machine. English novelist Julian Barnes quotes MacLean on the triune brain in his foreword to his 1982 novel Before She Met Me. Peter A. Levine uses the triune brain concept in his book Waking the Tiger to explain his somatic experiencing approach to healing trauma. Glenda Lee Hoffman, in her book, The Secret Dowry of Eve, Women's Role in the Development of Consciousness, references the triune theory explored by MacLean. And she goes one step further. Her theory about human behavior and the problems we create with that behavior distinguishes the prefrontal cortex as uniquely different from the rest of the neocortex. The prefrontal cortex, with its agenda of integration, is the part of the brain that can get the other parts to work together for the good of the individual. In many humans, the reptilian cortex, agenda, territory, and reproduction. In humans, that translates to power and sex, is out of control, and the amygdala stokes the fear that leads to more bad behavior. The prefrontal cortex is the key to our future if we can harness its power. That's a little bit about the triune brain. I was really looking to learn a little bit more about the lizard brain, but I guess that's called the reptilian cortex. So there you go. Hope you learned a little bit right here on What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at Smarter What, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for